Okay.
Oh, I had my mask all ready to go for the. Have you seen these yet, Heather?
We are
I
live.
have not.
Okay. So, welcome everybody. Welcome back to the
Nice.
Newt for a little bit of wine stories on our Thursday afternoon. It is a glorious day here in the Finger Lakes, warm and sunny. Perfect day to crack open a bottle of 2016 Dry Riesling. Whoa, this is not like a mirror.
Have you seen these yet, Heather?
I have not.
So I should probably mute my read out there so it doesn't repeat what I'm saying. So yeah, so great. We have kind of a small crowd today. Myself, Dave Whiting, a founding winemaker at Red Newt Cellars. Heather O'Grady Evans, our social media director and front of house manager. Front of house is pretty darn slow at these times. In fact, almost non-existent. Curbside pickup only. And Rebecca, our national brand manager, who has joined us here today from miles and miles away. We're all in our respective places. We're kind of missing each other, so we like to see each other here on the screen now and then. So great. So 2016, Riesling has been a focus of Red Newt for, well, I guess about 21 years since we started in 1998. Back in the early days, there wasn't quite as much Riesling around. So our production was pretty small, just a few hundred cases. And then in 2017, we started planting Riesling. Now we don't have a farm ourselves, so we started working with several of our key growers to plant Riesling on their farm at La Homa and Tango Oaks. So our Riesling production just a few years after that increased pretty dramatically, and dry now is one of our larger productions. Circle Riesling is our biggest production in Riesling, but then this dry Riesling is next in line. So let's have a taste. It's hard to not love Riesling. Do you guys agree?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, come on.
When they're so beautifully made.
Yeah, and dry Riesling in the Finger Lakes has really become the kind of hallmark. I mean, back when we all first started in this industry, the majority of what people were making were the semi-dry Rieslings. And to really watch each of the houses now evolve into that beautiful, this is our pillow, this is our standard for a dry Riesling. It's really quite beautiful. 16 was a really funky year. It was a drought. We hit drought stage 3 by the middle of July. And for this girl who's been, growing vegetables her entire life to sit in the middle of a very, very large garden and realize I was not going to have any plants whatsoever survive, it was really sad. It was really rough because I don't think that really in the Finger Lakes we've had a lot of experience with drought stress on grapes, but we definitely had it that year. You might remember a little bit more than I do, Dave, because I wasn't in the vineyards. I was trying to save my garden, but I mean, it was hot, and we had virtually no rain until late August.
Yeah, I don't think it rained at all from like beginning of June till middle late August. Not a single drop. So it was probably certainly at the time was the driest year in memory, and maybe still. It was quite exceptional. But things worked out pretty well. Of course, we don't use any irrigation in our vineyards. It's I should say, of course, a few people that irrigate here in the Finger Lakes are set up for irrigation, particularly in young vineyards when they're getting established. But it's not the norm, and neither of these vineyards, none of the vineyards that this came from, have irrigation. Most of this came from La Homa vineyards, 80%, and then some from Tango Oaks, and then some came from a different vineyard from another grower who we bought some fruit from in 2016, Dalrymple, which is up towards Ovid, maybe 10 or 15% from that vineyard. Mm-hmm.
So for people who aren't familiar with La Homa, then it's just these vineyards are on east side and west side of Seneca Lake.
Yeah,
so
Tango Oaks vineyard is Yeah, literally a quarter mile from the winery, straight down the hill. Just as you crest over the hill towards that last slope to the lake, that's where Lahoma Vineyards is. I mean, excuse me, Tango Oaks Vineyard is. And then Lahoma is not directly across, but across the lake and maybe south 2 or 3 miles. And that's in a really a different kind of situation. It's not quite as close to the lake, similar elevation. And it's not really on that downslope to the lake. It sort of sits a little above the highway and has these kind of undulating hills. It's a really spectacular site. And it's fairly new to vineyard, was previously pasture and orchard land. So it's pretty fertile soils, and also really nice sandy, well-drained soils, and a lot of diversity. We have 15 acres there, planted 5 acres a year for 3 years. Mhm. Yeah, but this is a really beautiful. Oh, here comes somebody. Who is it?
It's
Wow.
Megs.
It's a
Because I
goat.
recognize the building.
Recognize that view.
Hmm. But yeah, the 26. Whoa, I don't know. Yeah. Well, and Megs is going to join us here in a second, I bet. She's connecting.
So I have a question.
Mhm.
How many vintages of the dry Riesling have you made at Red Newt? Is this something that you've been making for 21 years or?
Well, let's see. How do I answer that? I think that I don't exactly remember, but we started out making a single Riesling in 1998, and then continue with just one bottling of Riesling up to around 2003, I think, or so. And we started doing a reserve Riesling early 2000, which was dry. But I don't think we introduced the dry until a little bit later.
Okay.
I mean, my oldest memory of a dry Riesling from the cellar would have been 2005, 2006. So I don't know how many before that.
Yeah. So we have Megs and Kelby joining us, winemaker and assistant winemaker. Newt Cellars. So I was just about to start talking a little bit about the winemaking of the 2016, but I'm going to pass it over to you guys because you guys made it.
By the skin of our teeth. Yeah, it was a great vintage, kind of across the board, nice and dry, nice and I don't know, nice amount of sun. Can be a challenge for Riesling to have something that austere coming from the vineyard, but we were lucky. This was predominantly a Lahoma blend, and it really just kind of came into its own in the cellar. Really nice fermentation. I think it was just a couple of lots that ended up going into it, and it really exemplifies the sort of big, broad style that we're aiming for.
Yeah, I think this might have been one of the first times that I think it was probably the Niner block that kind of showed itself to want to be the dry Riesling from this year.
Okay.
And for those that don't know the Niner block, that's the block that was planted in 2009.
It's very creative naming. It's creative naming. Yeah. I mean, this probably got at 16, we had really kind of hit our stride. So this was probably getting at least an overnight or a 2-day cold soak at that point after pressing. And then I think this was one of the slower fermentations, probably lasting a couple of months at least. And then I think this was probably also the year that we really pushed to stay on its full lees till about August before racking and bottling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, this was a spontaneous ferment, wasn't it?
Trying to remember. I think a large part of it was spontaneous. I think there were a couple other portions that were a little bit that came from different parcels that we'd had some selected yeast for, and actually tightened it up a little bit. The spontaneous fermentation, especially in a big broad year, was pretty muscular. So it's nice to have some components that were a little leaner and more mineral to balance it out.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, it's certainly a beautiful wine. Lean, crisp, driving makes me want to have some dinner and finish the bottle. I think I will try to wait until dinner to finish the bottle instead of finishing it before. But usually, as we often do in these, we kind of wrap things up by thinking about food and wine, because that's, especially wine like this, that's what makes it so beautiful. So I'm thinking dinner. Rebecca, what do you have in mind to go with the rest of your bottle of 2016 Dry Riesling tonight?
I feel very prepared. I'm very proud of myself because I knew what I was going to be opening. And so I was going to be at the winery this morning, and driving back home, I knew I was going to pass Kindred Fair in Geneva. And they've been doing such a beautiful job with their out the door menu program, and I've been salivating over all of their postings. So I pre-ordered 2 rabbit pot pies for our dinner this evening, which I think are going to just sing with this one.
All right. How about you, Kelby? What do you have in mind?
I think I'll probably enjoy some of this, probably with Megs, as we clean up from our bottling line extravaganza today. And it's, it's a beautiful sunny day here in the Finger Lakes. And I think some dry Riesling is exactly the ticket after a strenuous day of running around the cellar.
Yeah, and I've got some Fritos downstairs that I think this will pair nicely with too.
Oh, Fritos, yes.
How about you, Heather?
Well, we have some chicken that I actually marinated in a Greek marinade. It's one that I worked with a little old lady on while I was living in Crete. We've got that. We've got some really nice vegetables that we're going to just do a light stir fry on. And of course, I'm going to top that with some cheese. But I'm probably going to finish another glass of this while I have some Lively Run Sheldrake Moon, because it was really good for lunch. So I'm probably going to just have some more.
Excellent. That sounds great.
Great.
What about you?
So I think I'm gonna have a little chicken too. I've got a couple bone-in sort of chicken breasts, and I just can't stay away from lighting a fire and burning food over a flame on beautiful days like today. So I think that's gonna happen, and there's gonna be some sauce or marinade that involves lemons and capers and wine and probably butter and olive oil. So it's gonna take another glass to actually decide, but I think that's beautifully with this. So anyway, well, thanks very much everyone for joining us, and we'll be tasting again on Saturday at 4 p.m. and hope to see you there. More Riesling. So cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.